FM 92.7. We're coming to you live from our studio at Adisawe Kanda in Accra, also live on our numerous affiliates across the country, around the world. We're streaming live on 3news.com. Download the TuneIn app from the Google Play, Apple iOS store. Listen to us on the go. Coming up this afternoon, government says Ghana is on course to receive second tranche of IMF support program with $600 million as a financial organization describes the nation's performance since the program took off as very strong.
Our assessment is that performance under the program has been very strong and consistent with the authorities' commitments.
So generally, the macroeconomic environment continues to show strong signs of stability and recovery as government implements the IMF-supported PCPEC program.
We have details as the Bank of Ghana announces it will continue to maintain a tight monetary policy to consolidate the gains made so far. Also this afternoon, 70% of participants sampled in a research by Global Info Analytics say Ghana is headed in the wrong direction, as a significant number also believe their standard of living has worsened in the last 12 months. We get details for you, plus hear from the researchers if you stay with us for the next 30 minutes. A pleasure that you could be a part of this afternoon's bulletin. It's streaming live on Facebook. Our handle's 3FM927. Same handles on Twitter as well, 3FM927. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. We're beginning this afternoon's edition of the bulletin with the Finance Ministry and the International Monetary Fund, because government says the country is on course to receive the second tranche of the IMF support program with $600 million as a financial organization describes the nation's performance since the program took off in May as very strong. A team from the fund has in the last 2 weeks been assessing government's use of the first tranche of the funds ahead of possible disbursement in November. Mission Chief of the IMF, Stefan Roder, says his team is satisfied with the implementation thus far.
Once our executive board review is completed, Ghana would have access to another $600 million, bringing the total IMF financial support disbursed under the arrangement since May, when the program was approved, to about $1.2 billion. Before you hear from the Honorable Minister, the Governor, and we take your questions, allow me to provide a brief overview of our assessment at the current juncture. First, our assessment is that performance under the program has been very strong and consistent with the authorities' commitments. Specifically, the authorities have adjusted the course of policy making to confront very difficult economic and financial conditions and to ensure a brighter future for all Ghanaians. On the fiscal front, more specifically, the government has adjusted the policy stance to bring about a reduction in deficits and restore the sustainability of public finances. This started with a bold 2023 budget that sought to increase revenues and reduce expenditure. Our assessment is that fiscal performance has been strong, and Ghana is on track to lower the fiscal primary deficit on a commitment basis by about 4 percentage points of GDP this year. So in line with the program objectives.
So that's IMF Mission Chief Stefan Roder speaking at that joint news conference. My colleague Joseph Akable is joining me in studio. He's been monitoring the news conference from both parties, and we provided a bit more details. Joseph, many thanks. Let's start off with whether or not we have a sense from the fund on what the second tranche could potentially be used for once it comes in.
I mean, very consistent with how the first tranche was used in terms of supporting the balance of payments. You know, that is a major issue, and shoring up our reserves. That is what there has been the quest since May in attempt to try and get some stability. And the IMF Mission Chief says that is generally what the second tranche, if it comes in, once the board approval is obtained, that's what will be used for.
Maybe just a reaction to the question on the use of the fund. I think the minister can say much more, but of course, IMF funding has two purposes in the current environment. One is to help the central bank rebuild its reserve buffers, and the other one is to help the government finance itself at a time when the situation is quite difficult, especially when debt is being restructured. And so I think you have to think of it more from the macro angle as opposed to from an angle of IMF money financing specific programs. It's really about rebuilding reserves and allowing the government to function properly in general, not necessarily just for specific programs.
So that's the mission chief again, Stefan Rude. But we know that the central bank governor was there as well. He's come under heavy criticism, and he's been speaking as well about what his outfit is going to do to consolidate the gains. Exactly what do they intend to do?
He makes the point that they are not taking their eyes off the ball. They intend to tighten the monetary policy just to ensure that the gains that have been made so far are consolidated and the nation does not go back to the very reasons that we decided to go to the fund for a support program.
From the beginning of the year to date, the Bank of Ghana has built reserves of about $650 million instead of the programmed drawdown of $98 million. And this has been boosted by the innovative Gold for Reserves program. And as a result, we have seen relative stability in the exchange rate, depreciating by only 2.5% between February and now. It is therefore very important to sustain this strong performance and consolidate the gains we are seeing. Looking ahead, the Bank of Ghana will continue to maintain a tight monetary policy stance until it is confident that inflation is firmly anchored and aligned with the disinflation path agreed in the program. There would be challenges and difficulties as we work towards sustaining these gains, but we remain focused and committed to the reforms and prudent policies to ensure the full benefits of this program are achieved.
So that's the BOG Governor, Dr. Ernest Addison. The Finance Minister was there as well. He's been speaking to the state of the economy. What exactly did he say as well?
Specifically, he says Ghana has turned around the curve. That is to say that the economy is on a strong footing and on a path to a recovery in terms of stabilizing it and dealing with some of the major challenges like inflation, among others, that the nation has been encountering.
Notwithstanding all of these uncertainties around the global economic recovery, we are confident that we are on the right path and therefore optimistic about the future. Already the economy is responding positively, strongly to the news of the GOG and IMF reaching an SLA agreement for the first review, and we are eager to leverage this momentum to the very moment when the fund and executive board approves the first review in November. We're also grateful to the IMF, the World Bank, the FDB, other multilateral lenders, all our bilateral partners, and the good people of Ghana for their support as we make steady and strong progress out of this temporary difficulty, through which many countries around the world are also working their way forward. But I think a distinct part of the Ghana program is whether we can continue as a nation to speak one language, because it is clear that when we work together, there's nothing that we imagine that will not be possible.
That's the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. My colleague Joseph Akable is still in studio with me. He'll return on another subject matter shortly. But let's get on the telephone line. Dr. Patrick Isumi is an economist with the University of Ghana Business School. He's joined us on the telephone lines for a conversation. Doc, many thanks for speaking to us and for your patience as well. But let's start off with the Finance Minister's position that we've turned the economy is on the path of recovery. From where you sit and what the fund has been saying, is that really the case?
Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to the listeners. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I think you notice that the Finance Minister has been on this mantra about turning the corner for a while. He repeated it during the budget review. There's no question that we've seen some improvement from the beginning of the year. And those improvements are quite marginal. So I think we've turned the corner. I mean, you understand why he's trying to be upbeat about the economy, but I think in spite of the relative stability, I think we just need to be careful before we start preaching that we turn the corner.
And when you say careful, what exactly do you mean?
So I mean the indicators that we are using to say that we turn the corner. So they'll talk about the reserve position, they'll talk about the inflation, they'll talk about the. I think the one thing that we know has some significant strength is the currency. But we have to understand that that's because we are not paying our foreign debt, we are not servicing debt, and we have received the IMF inflow. So at the moment, even though the city is looking strong, it's more or less artificial strength, because if those extreme supports are removed, I'm not sure if the currency will be strong. Now, when you look at the other macroeconomic indicators, the inflation, yes, we have declined from the 54% high, but we are still at 40%. So, I mean, the last reading was a downward trend. We have to understand that we've seen this before. In the first quarter, we saw 3 consecutive declines, and we started seeing that we are on the decline. Then suddenly we saw an upward trend again. So I think if you look at some of those indicators, you agree that we've seen some stability to the start of the year, but we are nowhere near even where we started 2022.
Right.
Mindful what measures we have done in order to get the stability. So we see that, but in terms of significant that are really beginning to back and cripple this issue. So I think yes, some improvement has been seen, but we should be careful before we start changing our position.
Doug, I'll ask that if you could kindly just reposition for us. The line sounded a bit muffled, but maybe the last question I'll ask is the second tranche, 600 million. The conversation, particularly over the last few weeks with all of the protests that we've seen, is that the first tranche we did not see, or citizens did not feel that 600 million had been pumped into the Ghanaian economy. Is it the expectation that with this new injection expected, people can begin to feel it a bit more in terms of it not just going into balance of payment support?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I think you really have to manage the expectation. It's clear. There are two things: to support the fiscal position of the government and to build the balance of payment support. So we shouldn't create an expectation that, therefore, we are going to use it to build more roads, so we are going to use it to build more. That is all not what the funds are good for. It is just to help stabilize. Government revenues are falling short. But we are receiving foreign currency. That helps the Bank of Ghana, because we receive foreign, we're spending cedis. So that will help us to. But we shouldn't be
right
that because the second tranche is coming, there's going to be more for Ghanaians to spend, and therefore our living conditions will improve in the near term. That's not going to be the case.
Right then, Doc. I appreciate that you could speak to us this afternoon.
You're welcome.
That's Dr. Patrick Isumi. He's an economist with the University of Ghana Business School, speaking to us this afternoon. And we're going to switch our attentions now and do politics, because one of the flag bearer aspirants of the New Patriotic Party, Francis Adainimo, he's expressed disappointment that the president did not appoint him to his government. The former Asante Mampong member of parliament says his knowledge and experience are not being utilized for the country's development. Evelyn Tingma spoke to him and has the rest of the story.
Francis Adainimo polled only 9 votes at the August 26 NPP Superdelegates Conference, tied with Boachi Ejako, who later withdrew from the tiebreaker. He admitted to being surprised by the 9 votes.
I was expecting something more than that. But of course, that is what the delegates decided. And the objective of that election was to shortlist the contestants from 10 to 5. It was not to determine the flag bearer. It was not to give an indication to who becomes the flag bearer. And there were less than 1,000 delegates who voted in the super delegates elections. Now we are going into these elections with over 200,000 delegates who will decide the next flag bearer of the new patriotic party. So it can be anybody's game.
He remains confident in his chances of emerging victorious in the November 4 polls, despite receiving only 9 votes.
I seek to win and to lead a party, and then lead a party to win in 2024. The mood of the country is that the country needs a new face. Of course, the candidate for the NDC, we are all aware, is former President John Dramani Mahama. So it's now my party, the MPP, that should put forward their new face, who I know Ghanaians are looking for that new face to also come with a new way of doing things.
The former Mampong legislator expressed disappointment that President Akufo-Addo did not appoint him to serve in his government.
The disappointment is not associated with benefits that should accrue, but the fact that I have the knowledge, the experience, that I can work for my country, and that knowledge and experience, they are not being utilized, or underutilization of that knowledge and experience. That is what makes me disappointed. Professionally, I'm a civil engineer. I've been a civil servant before. I have worked at the ministry, at the ministerial level before as a civil servant.
That's Francis Adainimo, and we're staying with the governing New Patriotic Party because a pro group known as the Northern Youth Forum has advised politicians to avoid comments that have the potential of creating division among Ghanaians. It comes on the back of comments made by one of the flag bearer hopefuls of the party, Kennedy Japan, that electing the vice president to lead the party will make Northerners take over the face of politics in the country. Ibrahim Abubakar was at that news conference. Let's just get a bit more from him. Ibrahim, talk to us. What exactly are their concerns?
Well, Mawuena, their concerns is that they don't want any divisive or tribalistic comments during the campaign period. Just last week, we had a flag bearer hopeful of the MPP, Kennedy Ohene Ejakum, in an interview, saying that should the MPP vote for Dr. Bawumia to lead the party, then Northerners are gradually taking over the face of politics. Because if you look at NDC, they've already elected John Dramani Mahama to stand for them. Then we have APC, who is Ayariga. Then we have also a Apasero of the PNC. So for him, they should just, the accounts also deserve to lead the party, and for that matter, they shouldn't consider only the Northerners. And this group is saying that, well, for them, if you are an aspiring candidate, the best thing is to sell your message, tell the people what you can do, not necessarily bringing this kind of comments, because the party has its structures, and the unity that they are enjoying within the party and even within the country shouldn't be tampered with such comments. Jibril Al-Hassan is the spokesperson of the group.
Right, Ibrahim, many thanks. We'll hear from him subsequently, but we know that the governing New Patriotic Party has just issued a statement in relation to proxy voting ahead of the November 4 primaries. Let me just walk you through that statement, which has just come through. It's signed by the Secretary, Presidential Elections Committee, William Yamwa, and it's in relation to the submission of proxy applications for the November 4 presidential primary. And it reads that the Elections Committee, that's the Presidential Elections Committee, wishes to inform stakeholders that the deadline for the submission of proxy applications is next week, Friday, October 30 at 5 p.m. And for the purpose of clarity, it is further emphasizing that to successfully file for a proxy, one should show proof of absence or the cause of one's inability to be physically present at the voting center. An affidavit or a declaration from a commissioner of oath must accompany every application. All proxy applications should be filed in person at the NPP headquarters located at Asylum Down Accra, or submitted directly to the Secretary of the Presidential Elections Committee via Yamwa, that's the email address, is then that they wish to inform members that the proxy list will be published for public consumption and verification. And so the latest coming from the quarters of the governing New Patriotic Party, even as they build up towards the primary in November. So some more politics, and 70% of participants sampled in a research by Global Info Analytics said Ghana is headed in the wrong direction. A significant number also believe their standard of living has worsened in the last 12 months. More than 6,000 persons were sampled in the study between September 21 and October 1 across all 16 regions. It comes barely weeks after hundreds of Ghanaians massed up on the streets in the Occupy Jolobi protests and then the Occupy BOG protest to press home the demand for government to improve living conditions. Global Info Analytics has been assessing citizens' view on the state of the country and other political and social issues. I mentioned my colleague Joseph Akable was with me in the studio. He's been going through that data as well, and he walked us through it. Joseph, Mr. Dan, what are the details as we've seen?
And so first, 34% of Ghanaians approve of the performance of the president, while 66% disapprove. On the direction of the country, 70% of voters believe Ghana is headed in the wrong direction, 23% believed it is headed in the right direction, and 7% did not offer an opinion. The poll also shows that 47% of the voters believe that their standard of living has worsened in the last 12 months. Only 18% said it has improved, and 30% said it has not changed, and 5% have no opinion. There was an interesting question about the Inspector General of Police, Dr. George Ekufu-Dampare. The report indicates that some hold the view that the 61% say they have confidence in the way he's performing his job, and 28% have no confidence in his performance. On whether voters have confidence in the Electoral Commission, 50% say they have confidence in the election management body, 39% have no confidence. And when voters were asked if they share the view that hoarding of cash, as highlighted by the Cecilia Dapar case, an isolated case or widespread, 65% of the voters said that it is widespread. And so that is it in terms of some key highlights from this particular report.
Right, Joseph, many thanks, and interesting details there. Musa Dankwa is the Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. We'll seek to get a bit more from him if he joins us via phone, seeking to get particularly what the sense was from these participants as to why they believe the country is headed in the wrong direction. We'll try and raise him on the telephone lines. When we get him, we'll bring his thoughts to you shortly. But you're listening to the news here on 3FM 92.7. Our top stories this afternoon. Government says the country is on course to receive second tranche of the IMF support program worth $600 million, even as the financial institution or the financial organization, that's the IMF, describes the country's performance since the program took off as very strong. Also, we have been going through the details of the Global Info Analytics latest survey, and we'll be hearing from Musa Dankwa shortly. But let's do health now. As Ghana strives to attain self-financing of vaccines, calls have been made for a sustainable source of funding for immunization across the country. According to the Global Alliance of Vaccines and Immunization, Gavi, the yawning gaps in the health sector, including the periodic shortages of vaccines, must be addressed. These, among others, are being discussed at the Midday National Meeting over vaccine financing here in Accra. Christian Nyale is my colleague there, is joining us on the telephone lines with a bit more. Christian, tell us more about this meeting and what it is seeking to achieve.
All right, Eric. So the understanding is that by 2027, the foreign donors who help Ghana or who co-finance Ghana's vaccine acquisition and distribution would withdraw their services. So as part of measures to prepare the country ahead of that, Ghana is already working on a draft national plan to work toward. It's more or less like a roadmap to ensure that the country puts in place adequate measures to prepare for the times ahead, especially when it comes to immunization. Like we know, there have been instances of shortages of vaccines at health facilities across the country, which have in many instances led to loss of life. And so this plan or roadmap fits into that conversation to ensure that there is adequate preparation with adequate input and suggestions from all stakeholders that are involved. So one of the key partners is the Global Alliance for Vaccine, as in Gavi. And so the Chief Policy, Strategy and Innovation Officer, Dr. Kelechi Ohiri, is of the view that Ghana is already doing well, yet there are gaps and several challenges that must be considered in doing this. He has been speaking to three during the program. Take a listen.
A progressively larger share of co-financing for vaccines. And that means that year on year, between now and 2030, when Ghana finally starts fully financing its vaccines, there will be an increase in cost of maintaining such a high quality program and maintaining that coverage. This is not easy for any country, much less a country that is going through its fiscal challenges. So it is quite commendable that today, we're here today to really map out a roadmap for how Ghana can successfully continue to sustain a high quality vaccine program. And I just want to underscore how critical today is and how critical this exercise is to actually come up with a clear roadmap for that. And that clear roadmap needs to address a couple of things. One, the roadmap needs to actually address one, how does Ghana begin to optimize its vaccine portfolio so that it is more affordable? Secondly, how does Ghana think through co-financing over the next couple of years so that financing of vaccines is not just provided, but it's also provided in a timely manner so that we can avoid things like stockouts.
So that's the Chief Strategy, Policy and Innovation Officer for Gavi, Dr. Kelechi Ohiri. Christian Yale is just with us on the telephone. Chris, just before you go, the expectation at the end of today's meeting.
All right, Eric. And so there are a number of stakeholders, like I mentioned. The Ministry of Finance has representatives here, the Ministry of Health, as well as Gavi and other international partners who are currently locked up in a stakeholder consultation engagement, which is underway. At the end of the day, it is expected that the input of these stakeholders would be, put together to influence the policy direction going forward. One thing, though, that is important again is the issue of accountability and a proper framework for immunization, which is equally being considered. So at the end of the day, the government would have a clear pathway towards the achievement of a self-financing status when it comes to vaccine production.
Right then, Christian Yale, my colleague, the immunization program, providing a bit more details there. Many thanks, Chris, for those details. And that's our bulletin for you this afternoon, which came to you from our studio here on the John Hammond Street in Accra. Unfortunately, we couldn't connect with Musa Dankwa, who's the Executive Director of Polling Group Global Info Analytics. We'll try and get him, bring his thoughts to you subsequently in other bulletins. There's a hot edition a lot later this evening. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. The business team, they're on standby, ready and waiting. Bismarck Ausa will join us with the very latest from the world of business shortly.
Time now for Business Daily with me, Bismarck Ausa. Coming up, IMF to revise its 1.5% growth projection for Ghana following improved macroeconomic indicators.
We will revise growth up for this year. What we are seeing in terms of growth dynamics is better than what we were anticipating. I think this is really very good news.
Meanwhile, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta says the economy is on the path of recovery. Plus, World Bank revises Ghana's economic growth marginally to 1.5% for 2023. We will tell you why. Thanks for your company. Now to our very first story. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has hinted of plans to revise its growth forecast for Ghana following improved macroeconomic conditions. The Bretton Woods institution had earlier projected that the country will end 2023 at 1.5%, a situation the Bank of Ghana sought to challenge following controlled exchange rate and inflation. IMF Mission Chief for Ghana, Stefan Rode, addressed the media at a joint finance ministry and IMF finance briefing organized here in Accra.
What we had in terms of projection for the year as a whole was 1.5%. So that gives you an idea of the difference in terms of what is actually happening on the ground and what the assumptions of the program were. And so yes, we will revise growth up for this year, but I will come up with details and the exact number later in the future. What we are seeing in terms of growth dynamics is better than what we were anticipating. I think this is really very good news. On the stability front, I would say this is the same. Inflation is coming down. International reserves of the central bank are going up, which is also very important to bolster confidence. And so we also have the adjustment, the fiscal position. The minister mentioned the numbers for end June that are much better also than the targets. The external position in general is stronger. The currency has become much less volatile than what Ghana has experienced at the end of last year, where it was a very challenging situation. So clearly there is a turnaround, there is an improvement, and signs of macroeconomic stability are now emerging.
Stefan Rode is IMF Mission Chief for Ghana. Meanwhile, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta says the economy is on the path of recovery following improved macroeconomic conditions. In a related development, the World Bank has revised downwards Ghana's 2023 growth prediction by 0.1%, a marginal decrease attributed to dampened economic activity in the country. The following 3 Business Desk report has more.
Ghana's GDP growth is expected to decelerate from 3.1% in 2022 to 1.5% in 2023, a marginal reduction in the World Bank's earlier prediction of 1.6%. This was revealed in the bank's latest Africa Pulse report. Although economic performance in Ghana exceeded market expectations in the first quarter of 2023, with GDP growth accelerating to 4.2% year-on-year from 3.2% in the last quarter of 2022, more recent higher frequency indicators show mixed results. The Bretton Woods institution says efforts towards fiscal consolidation will hamper aggregate demand in the economy, adding that economic activity is dampened by poor performance in agriculture. According to the World Bank, eliminating monetary financing of the deficit and restructuring central bank's foreign exchange market interventions might help reduce inflation, reconstitute reserves, and bolster investor confidence.
And that was a 3 Business Desk report. We can now hear from Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, who says the economy is on the path of recovery following improved macroeconomic conditions.
So generally, the macroeconomic environment continues to show strong signs of stability and recovery as government implements the IMF-supported PCPEC program. Based on available data from year to date, GDP growth has rebounded strongly, averaging 3.2% in the first 2 quarters, compared to 3% the same period in 2022, mainly on the back of growth in services and in agriculture. The average growth of 3.2% for Q1 and Q2 is higher than the 2023 revised growth target of 1.5%. So we are doing well. The latest price development in August 2023 also indicated a fall in headline inflation after consecutive upward trends since May 2023, and it dropped to 40.1%. And as the governor mentioned, we are looking very strongly at this to ensure that food prices come down.
And that was Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. Now, this is still Business Daily with me, Bismarck. Also, moving on, the Food and Drugs Authority, FDA, has revealed over 6,000 products have so far been registered under its progressive licensing scheme since its inception. The CEO of the authority, Delis Mimi Darko, made this known on the sidelines of a training program organized for her outfit by GIZ on manufacturing regulations.
The Progressive Licensing Scheme is a Government of Ghana initiative being implemented by the Food and Drugs Authority. It seeks to introduce a 3-stage licensing regime to support small business units to improve on the safety, quality, and wholesomeness of their products.
Since we started in 2020, we've got about over 6,000 products registered on the Progressive Licensing Scheme and over 3,000 companies that we have registered. You know that we are dealing with startup companies, and the idea is that no matter where you are manufacturing from, we will allow you to start once there are no safety implications to your product. And we will register you and give you a license and then help you to move up to the next level.
Madame Darko further added that women have been major beneficiaries of the scheme since its introduction.
I'm happy to say as a woman that at least 70% of the entrepreneurs are women and who are starting up their business. So it's been very good.
That was a Business Desk report by my colleague Michael Obodu. Before we go, and on the international front, financial regulators in the US are suing Elon Musk after the billionaire said he would no longer cooperate with its investigation into his purchase of Twitter, now known as X. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, asked a federal court to order him to comply with their request that he sit for a third session of testimony about the deal. The move to sue followed receipt of a letter from a lawyer for Mr. Musk, which said he refused to appear as requested. It accused the SEC of harassment. And that will be all for Business Daily with me, Bismarck Ausa. For more business stories, please log on to 3news.com. Thanks for your company.